Mm-hmm. Share this with the share group and then we'll get going. All right. All right, guys. We're live. Welcome to the SevereMMA UFC 268 preview show. My name is Iain O'Neill, and today I'm joined by Harry Powell and the Prince of Poland, Sean Denny. We're going to talk about the UFC card, which is just moments away. We're not too far away from it now, so we'll just we come on here, do a quick preview on it. But before we get into the card itself, let's talk about our sponsors, eatallreal.com, and you can see the logo up there in the top corner. This stream is brought to you by All Real Nutrition Protein Bars, a great Irish company by our friend Niall Harty, who's in the Twitter group. There is a great company that just makes really delicious protein bars. And if you go over there to allrealnutrition.com, enter the code in SevereMMA, get yourself 15% off there. And that would be helping us and helping Niall and keeping yourself healthy with those great tasting bars. Harry, Sean, how are you guys today? We're not too far away now from action kicking off here at UFC 268. We can start off, I guess, with the main event with Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington. The madness that we had to deal with Bellator and everything this week, I didn't really have too much of a chance to kind of really think about this card all that much. I kind of started thinking about it this morning. And for me, the fact that we are getting ready to watch one of the pound for pound greatest fighters on the planet right now, in Kamaru Usman, does it feel that way to you guys? Because it doesn't really feel that way to me. Harry?
It does feel like that, to be honest. I feel like I maybe have had a little bit more of a chance to drink this week in. I watched Bellator more as a fan than I did as a media member. But it does feel like we're about to watch one of the pound for pound greats. It does feel like we're going to witness Kamaru Usman either showing again his level and showing the improvements he's made with more time under Trevor Whitman, or we might see Colby implement a different game plan and maybe take that title. But it does feel like a big fight. I think it also helps that the card is so stacked, right? Like, it feels as though the UFC is stacking this card, one, because this is generally what they do around this time of year, but also I think to boost Kamaru Usman's stock, right? You get Justin Gaethje opening up a main card. You have a Shane Burgos. You have a Rose Namajunas. You have a Weili Zhang who's going to bring that Eastern audience in. And at the top of that bill, you've got one of the most polarizing fights in terms of the stuff outside of the cage in Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington, right? And it feels as though the UFC is backing their man, and that man is Kamaru Usman.
Mm-hmm. Big time, yeah. I think it's going to be a great fight. The first fight was a really good fight. I mean, Colby Covington started strong in that fight, and there's just somebody. If anybody wants to comment on it, you can comment there. Like here, we'll bring it up. We'll answer your questions. What's our names? My name is Iain O'Neill. In the middle is Harry Powell, and then the far side is Sean Denny. So you can ask us questions away in there. Just type them in. We'll answer whatever we can. Or if you have any predictions or anything that you'd like to say, just hit up the comment section there. But back to the main event. I mean, the first fight was really good, really close. Colby started well. And what we see in Kamaru Usman is somebody who starts slow and kind of builds his way into fights. We saw something similar with Peter Yan last week. So what's your expectations of this rematch, Sean Denny? How do you see it going down? Do you see it playing out similar enough to the first fight? What way do you kind of feel that the fight is going to go down?
Yeah, I think it's going to go down similar enough, except I think Usman might get a foothold in earlier. Colby is a frantic fighter. Like he's got so much volume, so many takedown attempts. Like if you get sort of confused by his personality a lot, so you might not give him the props as an actual fighter, but he's always on the offensive, always throwing punches. But I think Usman is just getting better and better on the feet, where he doesn't even need his wrestling at times anymore. So I can see maybe the second or third round, Usman really turning it on, and we'll see how Colby can deal with that compared to the last time.
Yeah, I think really, if you're Kamaru Usman here, I think you're going to be wanting to better your first result here, I think, and I can kind of see him doing that tonight. If Colby Covington is going in with the mentality that he won the first fight, or he was winning the first fight, I'm not sure that's the best mentality to go into this fight with. And we've seen Kamaru Usman compete multiple times over the past year. We haven't seen Colby Covington in there since the Tyron Woodley fight. So what Colby Covington are you expecting to see tonight, Harry?
So I was actually asked about this a little bit earlier today, and it feels to me, maybe this is controversial, maybe this isn't, but I feel as though Trevor Whitman has a fantastic record of taking fighters under his wing and churning out almost immediate results, right? The change in Kamaru Usman that we've seen over the past year has been nothing short of cataclysmic, right? And a lot of that has to come down to that relationship between himself and Trevor. However, if you look at MMA Masters, they are a team that build fighters from the ground up, right? Strip away a game, build a fighter, and bring them out. I don't think that you can do that in the same way that Trevor does, right? Trevor's looking to bolt on things to already fantastic fighters, and MMA Masters are looking to build from the ground up. And I just don't think you've got the time to do that with Colby. Now, the difference, I think, or at least the difference I'm expecting, and maybe this is slightly going further than the question, is, as you've already alluded to, what does Colby really think about the last fight, right? Is he going to come in and say, the last fight's done, it doesn't matter, it's a fresh fight, we're both different fighters? Is he going to come in knowing that he lost that fight? Is he going to come in with an inflated ego thinking that he was actually winning that fight? I don't know the answer to that. And I think we're going to find that out very, very early. But you'd like to think that Colby has, or at least his team have gone away and analysed that fight properly, regardless of whether Colby himself has done that or not, and at least come up with a game plan that can better his last performance.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that we all kind of would be in agreement where that we would want to be taking everything that Colby Covington says with a pinch of salt, whether he thinks he won or lost that fight. So, I mean, I'd be of the same opinion of yourself, Harry, that if he doesn't come in here with a different kind of a mentality, that he is certainly going to lose. And Mark just mentioned in the comments there, is there a factor of Usman's last 2 KOs being against former lightweights? A bigger man like Colby should be able to take the power better, you would think. What would you think about that, Sean?
He broke his jaw the first time. He might do worse again, and now that the striking is better. I think Kamaru was probably just discovering his power. He's probably learning where to put his weight under Trevor Whitman and how to time his shots. So I think power is going to be better than ever here.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, like, I think with Kamaru, he was a guy who always had power, but maybe didn't really know how to use that power. And obviously with Trevor Whitman coming in there, he's after getting really Usman to where he needs to be with his striking. And I was a big on Usman finishing fights in order to get himself to the elite level status. And now we see him fighting as a pound for pound fighter. And Colby struggled to avoid the straight right from Usman in the first fight, and Usman has made that far more lethal since that fight. If he's not learned from him, I can see him getting KO'd, and I would have to agree with Daniel there for sure. And obviously Harry Kearns, the legend himself, thinks that Usman is going to have a death on his hands tonight, so we'll wait and see that. But just maybe to round up on this fight, legend Kel Allen as well is also thinking that Kamaru Usman. So it seems pretty unanimous that everybody is thinking that Kamaru Usman is going to win this fight tonight. Maybe before we move on to the co-main event, if he does win that fight tonight, what's next for Usman? Does he wait for, obviously Leon Edwards is waiting in the wings. He's a big fight coming up. You have Khamzat Chimaev, a good win. He's not too far away now either. You have that option of moving up to the middleweight, which I would love to see a fight between Kamaru Usman and Israel Adesanya. I say throw every bit of money at those guys and make that happen too. So what do you guys think would be next for Kamaru if he was to get the win?
So there's something that's concerned me slightly over the last little while with Kamaru is that he's already talking about retirement. He's already talking about 1 foot out the door. He's already talking about, I don't know how long I'm going to do this for, and all of these sorts of things. And obviously he's backing that back up with legacy fights and whatever. If you're Kamaru Usman and you're actually thinking about winding this down, defending the title a few more times, and then bowing out, are you going to take a Khamzat Chimaev fight? Probably not, is the answer, right? Are you going to take a Leon Edwards fight? Maybe. Do you go up and fight a bigger man? Maybe. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens after this, frankly, because we're going to see where Kamaru's head really is at. If he goes out there and absolutely destroys Colby, right, which is a possibility, of course. If he goes out and destroys him, I'll be very interested to see what he says after the fight, right? On the mic, does he say, Leon Edwards, you're next? Does he say, Chimaev, you're next? In the pre-fight build-up, he's been asked about both fighters. And for Leon Edwards, he's basically said, knock somebody out, right? Get a great performance, get a highlight reel, and then you're there. And with Khamzat Chimaev, he's basically said, oh, Jesus, Harry Kearns, what is that? Fucking hell. But yeah, he's basically said to Chimaev, like, I really like his work. You're probably a couple of fights away, sort of thing. You know what I mean? But I don't know. I don't know who's next for him, genuinely, you know?
Like, I think, you know, going back to what Daniel said and Stella there as well, like, you know, you got to be looking at Leon Edwards next. Like, to be honest, I think that's the right fight to make. You know, the guys have fought already. And, you know, for me personally, I want to see him move up and whether fight Izzy or as Rosarch says there, Bobby Knuckles in late 22. So there's no guarantees that Izzy wins that title. But I think, you know, if Kamaru still stays the pose of these welterweights, there is only one thing for him to do, and that's move up. But we won't hang about and talk too much about this main event. We'll move along to the co-main event here now. And this is another great fight, another strawweight title fight between Rose Namajunas, who will defend her title in a rematch against Zhang Weili. Before we get into the fight, what's your guys' opinions on it? I'll go to Sean Denny first. Do you think that the immediate rematch was the fight to make here in the division? Or do you think that they should have held out and maybe gave Esparza the title shot, Sean?
I probably would have given it to Esparza. Like the first fight, like, it was a clear knockout. She wasn't champion for all that long. But I think Esparza was the first champion going in, so I think she probably deserved a little bit better. If she wasn't the previous champion, though, I'd probably go with Zhang to go this time around. Like, the division at the top, it's sort of thin. Like, you're down to Joanna next as contender soon after that, which is probably not going to happen anytime soon from what I'm hearing. But yeah, I think Esparza as a former champion probably deserved it, just based on sort of a nod back to the past, and she's put 5 wins together.
Yeah, and she also has a win over. Yeah, she has a win over Rose Namajunas as well. That's who she won the title off back in the day. So the story was there. And Ken Allen just mentioned that Rose always seems fragile and then destroys. How do you see her dismantling Zhang Weili this time around? What would you think of that, Harry? Do you see her coming in here and dismantling her this time around? Her mental game was always questioned. I even questioned it myself before the first fight, but to be honest, when I saw her standing across the way, just muttering the words, I am the best, I am the best, I was like, yeah, Rose Namajunas is ready to go, and I expect see the same here. So do you think she will come in and run over Zhang Weili again this time, Harry?
I'd struggle, to be honest. I think I've gone back and forth on this fight many times over the last week. I think it really does depend what happens when Rose gets in that cage, right? To me, when I see Rose walk out, I'll make my decision. Because up until this point, You can say whatever you want in pre-fight. You can say everything you want in the press conferences, but until you're in there and you see her, I don't know. But if we're just talking about fighter A, fighter B at their best, man, the reason why we saw the battle that we saw with Joanna and Weili the first time was because they were both willing participants of that fight. Both of them wanted to walk forward. Both of them wanted to land shots. Both of them have a similar style. Rose won't allow that, right? That's not Rose's style whatsoever. So if we're looking pure fighter A, fighter B, Zhang is a fighter that will walk forward, and Rose is more than happy to fight on the back foot. She's more than happy to circle. She's more than happy to cut those angles. Iain Gary and Hamzat, fuck me, why do you want people to die? Why? But yeah, look, I think if Rose comes in at 100%, she wins this fight. If she doesn't, it's a long, long night for her. We saw her against Andrade. The mental game came in there, right? Absolutely smashed Andrade from pillar to post for a round. Held on to Kimura, gets knocked out. Second fight, does the same thing. Smashes her for a round and a half, slows down near the end of the second, and then gets battered in the third, right? Like, you can't
and
make...
like, it's what...
Gang.
Yeah, that's one thing that's the big question I have coming into this fight is what is going to happen in the latter stages of the fight.
Yeah.
Will we've seen Zhang Weili go in against Johanna. She fought hard for 5 rounds. She was still there. We have seen Rose wilt in later rounds in the recent fights. Now, that's not necessarily meaning she hasn't corrected that since the Andrade fight, but it was there and we've seen it. So, I mean, looking, if you were to see this fight going into rounds 3, 4, and 5, Sean, Denny, who would you kind of be leaning towards, and that who will be getting the better of the fight in that stage of it if it does get that far?
Zhang's power would be a big worry when it gets to that stage. I could see, like, if she's landing in the 3rd and 4th, it's going to tire Rose out a lot. The one thing that I find interesting with Zhang is she moves. This is a brand new camp for her. Like, she's with Cejudo and the lads, the coach with the glasses, Eric A.
Eric Albarracin.
So that's an interesting one. Like, training with the booze, a constant booze while she's training, and Henry Cejudo yelling pro USA abuse at her the whole time to get used to the crowd. Like, that'll be an interesting one to see how that new training setup works for her.
Yeah, there's one thing that she did jump around quite a bit before the Johanna fight as well. I believe she had to change her camp around 5 times, and that didn't really affect her all that much in that fight. But she has come out and said that some of the comments and the reaction of the crowd did kind of play a factor in her mental game the last time. But I don't know. I find it hard to kind of analyze this fight because we didn't see enough of the first fight, and it's hard to tell whether there's openings there that Zhang Weili leaves or whether Zhang Weili just got caught by a head kick from Rose. So it'll be definitely interesting to see how that fight goes. I mean, I think that it's definitely going to go longer than the first fight for sure this time. If I'm Zhang Weili and I'm her corner, I'm telling her to sit back and kind of fight on the back foot for maybe the early stages of this fight and then kind of turn up the heat. And if you're going to talk about this fight from a judging perspective as well, the shots that Zhang Weili will land in comparison to maybe some of Rose's shots, and especially in boxing range, they're going to be probably more impactful as well as this fight goes on. Whereas if it ends up going to the judges' scorecards, that may end up going a little bit in Zhang Weili's favor. So what would you guys think about that?
I mean, just to just pick up one thing you said earlier about did Zhang Weili just get caught? I mean, Rose sold that low kick, right? Mm-hmm. She absolutely sold that low kick. And you can see because Zhang brings her left leg back, she brings her hips back, and her hands come out to catch that low kick. So that wasn't, it wasn't luck, it wasn't fortune. Rose absolutely sold it and absolutely landed. Now, will she sell the same kick and land the same kick? I mean, I doubt it, right? But I think one thing we have to say about, and this will lead into impactful strikes, right? Weili is definitely the more physical fighter, definitely looks stronger in the clinch, definitely looks thicker, definitely looks more muscle bound. However, Rose is a sniper, right? And she only needs one. Ask Ioana Jędrzejczyk, right? She only needs one. So you're absolutely right from a judging perspective. You're going to see if this fight goes long, the more impactful strikes will absolutely be in the favor of Zhang Weili. However,
and I think, and it was a good point that what you said as well in setting up that kick, because what we did see in that early stages of the fight was a lot of feinting from Rose Namajunas, which Zhang Weili did bite on, which ended up getting her caught in the first place. And that's definitely something that'll have to be corrected, and as well in this fight too. And before we talk anymore, we might move on a little bit from this fight as well. Speaking of impactful shots, we'll go ahead and have a little bit of a chat about Justin Gaethje versus Michael Chandler, because I think that there's going to be plenty fucking impactful shots in this fight. Fight that was supposed to be third fight on the card, but very smartly has been moved to the first fight of the pay-per-view. So make sure you tune into the pay-per-view early and don't miss this fight, because I think this is going to be an absolute barn burner. Very well, if one of these guys pulls off an impressive victory, they could be very well into next title shot. You never know. Sean, Denny, how do you see this fight going down?
I think we're going to see Gaethje's wrestling manage to keep it on the feet, and that's going to be probably a very early night for Chandler. I think Gaethje is going to have it all his own way. He's going to get into a trading match with Chandler, and he's probably going to finish it within the first couple of rounds. Is how I see it going.
Harry, you're a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy. How badly was Justin Gaethje exposed against Khabib Nurmagomedov? It looked like a fish out of water there on the ground when he was on his back, and ended up getting submitted pretty easily. When you were looking at that fight, what was your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think this, I guess, is my concern overall for the whole fight, right? Justin Gaethje has openly said that in his high school wrestling days, he would gain most of his wins in his matches by counter wrestling, defensive wrestling, scoring points off failed shots, scoring points off reversals, scoring points off counters, right? If you're Michael Chandler and you're looking, can I take this guy down? The answer is probably yes, right? Dustin Poirier managed to get him down. Michael Johnson had some success. And obviously, I mean, look, Khabib takes everyone down, right? So we can strike that off. However, when it hit the mat, Khabib's ability to transition through his positions and eventually get to the triangle was as if Justin Gaethje had never been to a jiu-jitsu class before, right? Now, that's obviously not the case, right?
Do you think that was down to Khabib's excellent Brazilian jiu-jitsu, or was it down to Gaethje's lack of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, or maybe a mixture of both?
I think it has to be a mixture of both, right? Khabib is obviously a master. Obviously. He obviously knows exactly what he's doing in the grappling realms. However, grappling at such a high level, generally, it takes a longer time for you to break those guys down. If you look at Charles Oliveira, Tony Ferguson, right? It took a little while for Charles Oliveira to get that pass. And when he got that pass and he managed to get to mount, that was very, 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 very slick. But it wasn't even, there was no resistance whatsoever, right? So if I'm Michael Chandler, if I'm Michael Chandler's corner, my game plan here, he's talked all this stuff about war and whatever else. I go in, I run across the cage, I put him against the fence, I take him down, I submit him. I mean, it's that simple, right? Who knows, though, whether Sean's point will stack up. Because if Gaethje can keep it on the feet, you don't want to get into a war with Gaethje. You just don't, right? It's just not a game you want to play.
No, but Gaethje is very good at drawing these fights out of his opponents. You know what I mean? When he gets it up there in his opponent's face and his forward pressure, and you're just always going to be looking at an exciting fight when you're looking at a Justin Gaethje fight. And just to kind of piggyback off your comment on what Mike Chandler should do, I mean, there's two big things. If you're Mike Chandler here, what you have to do, what you said, Harry, and try and put Gaethje on his back early and try and implement your grappling on him. If you're Justin Gaethje here, you want to be looking at the leg kick, I think, and getting that off. Mike Chandler has had problems with leg kicks in the past, and I mean, that's what you need to do. Chandler likes to cut off the cage, move forward, cut his angle just to land big punches. Like, Chandler's not looking to land 4 or 5 punches. He's looking to land that one big atomic bomb. And he's done that. He's kind of manufactured his game very well in cutting off the cage so that he can get those shots off. That happened in the Dan Hooker fight. But I mean, how you take that away is you take away that lead leg. So I'm expecting Justin Gaethje to come out here with a very heavy game plan of leg kicks, like he pretty much always does anyway. You know, he likes to rely on those leg kicks early, which opens up some strikes to the head in later fights when fighters are kind of thinking about that leg kick. So, you know, it's a very interesting stylistic matchup between these two guys. I think that there's no way that this fight doesn't deliver. I guess if you were to give a prediction on this fight, Sean Denny, what would it be?
Gaethje round 1 or 2 for me. Like, I think, as you say, like, Chandler is looking for that atomic bomb, but I'm not convinced the atomic bomb is going to put Gaethje out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. What about you, Harry? If you were to make a prediction on this fight, what would it be?
So my prediction is a second round Justin Gaethje TKO, right? But there's a big caveat to that, and that big caveat is, can he stop the takedown? Because unless Chandler's got 15 atomic bombs in his back pocket, I think Sean Denny's absolutely fucking right. You don't just put him away with one, right? You look at the Dustin Poirier fights, you look at the Eddie Alvarez fight, you don't just put him away with one. It has to be more than one. And if Chandler can't get it to the ground, it's going to be a long 5 minutes in that cage, you know.
Mm-hmm. Big time. And is there any other fights on the main card, guys, that you're looking forward to? I know we have Frankie Edgar in action as well. How do you see that fight going down? I don't know. I think it's a good favourable matchup for Frankie Edgar in regards that he's not really hitting a big heavy hitter, a guy that might be able to do damage to him on the feet. Like Vera can do damage on the feet, but I wouldn't say he necessarily has one punch knockout power. How do you see this fight going down, Harry? How do you see it playing out? Do you think it's a good matchup for Frankie? You think he can get it done here?
I don't think he gets it done. I think the only thing Chito has to be wary of is his kicking game. If he's as fluid with his kicks as he is in usual fights, Frankie will happily grab those and take him down. Chito Vera is no slouch on the ground, but he has range, he has size, he has athleticism over Frankie. And Frankie has been finished now 3 fights in a row, and he's never been finished before that, right? So that tells me one big thing. At 40, in a lower weight class, that doesn't say good things to me about your chin. No. And I'm not saying that, as you rightly said, Chito doesn't bang, not in the same way that some of the other guys that he's fought do. But if you can't get the takedown, and he is landing shots, it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. Like, I mean, when I say that Chito Vera doesn't have the power to put him away, it doesn't necessarily mean that I don't think he will or won't put him away. But I mean, I think it would be more so an accumulation of damage coming from Chito Vera if he was to stop this fight. Do you think, Sean Denny, that Chito Vera does have the ability to stop this fight, or how do you see it playing out?
I definitely do. Like, I think at 40, I think Frankie Edgar is number 1 for cage time. Like, I think his durability is probably at its lowest point. It's likely going further. And Chito Vera is a very, very hungry fighter. And I think the hunger will have him in the gym every day with Jason Perillo, just going over combinations. And Perillo is a mastermind on the feet. And I'd say that's probably going to be Frankie's downfall and possibly the last we see of him.
Yeah, I don't hope, if it doesn't go well for Frankie tonight, or even if it does go well, I would love for this to be his last fight. But for his comments earlier on this week saying that he'll be fighting on his deathbed, don't really kind of paint a picture like he's willing to hang it up anytime soon. And it was an excellent point too I was meaning to bring up. And yeah, that's a great point by Carl as well. Edgar did beat Pedro Munoz 2 fights ago. And that was only less than a year ago as well. So, I mean, he can do it, but, it's not great to play MMA mats. I think Chito Vera is a young, hungry, up-and-coming guy now. This is going to be the biggest fight of his career. And I think that he'll fancy himself on the feet. He'll have the size and have the reach advantage as well. And his work with Jason Perillo will definitely stand to him in this fight. But I'm not completely ruling out Frankie too. If he can go in there and implement his game plan like he normally does, we could see him pick up a decision win here. Is about as much as I would give Frankie a chance in this fight. Moving on, we'll just scoot over the rest of the main card as well. We have Billy Quarantillo versus Shane Burgos. That's the people's main event, or Harry's main event anyway. I mean, this fight has all action written all over it. I mean, I don't think Shane Burgos is capable of being in a boring fight. So I'm just wondering, Harry, you were interested in this fight. How do you see it playing out?
I think Burgos just wears him down. The reason why I love Shane Burgos so much is his body work. He's one fighter that is more than happy to invest in the body work early and often. And, we see it. Makwan Amakani was an absolutely fantastic example. He worked the body often and early, and by the end of it, Makwan had no gas left to fight, right? And when you've got no gas left, you're just a sitting duck, and that's exactly what Shane Burgos likes. He likes to break people. He likes to push forward. He likes to land his shots. He is more than happy to take shots, to give shots. And whilst I must say the Edson Barbosa knockout was a pretty scary one, the delayed drop was a pretty scary one. I think I'd like to see what sort of state Burgos is in. This is a huge matchup. A huge matchup for both guys. Billy Quarantillo was another guy that likes bodywork. He's another guy that doesn't like to take a back step. So, yeah, we are absolutely in for a barn burner. And I don't see this going 3 rounds.
I could see this. This is kind of a fight that could go anyway. We could have an early finish. We could have a battle and a late finish. We could have a decision here. How do you see the fight going down? And do you think it has potential to be maybe fight of the night, John?
Yeah, definitely. Like Billy Q is somebody we've seen sort of grow up throughout the various UFC products. He went from tough, then he was on the Contender Series, then he's in the UFC proper. Like he's a wily veteran at this point. But I do think the body shots, you're putting money in the bank with them, and like if it is as action packed as we think it is, I think Burgos is going to be cashing out on that in round 3.
Yeah, I would fancy Burgos for this fight as well. I mean, I like to look at the level of competition that fighters have fought, and he's been fighting elite level guys. He's dropped these last 2 against Josh Emmett, and also Edson Barbosa, which is like that shit happens sometimes, So that'll be a very interesting fight, and one that'll be all action on the main card. Good card placement there. Just moving on then to the prelim section, and we have before we get on to Iain Gary, and we'll talk about that fight just as before we round it up. But we also have the debut of Alex Pereira here, who is the last guy to have knocked out Israel Adesanya in kickboxing. Heavy hands. He comes in against Greek guy Michailidis this time. Good solid matchup for him. We have seen kickboxers come in, or in the past, Tyron Spong or other guys like that come in and do good, although it doesn't always work out for kickboxers too. But Alex Pereira has fought a couple of fights in mixed martial arts already. He's won them all, had produced a couple of devastating knockouts. Harry, do you expect the same to see from him? Do you see him coming in here getting Michailidis out of there early enough in this fight?
Yeah, probably. I mean, the UFC have picked a nice stars matchup, and when it doesn't look like it's going to be a Gokhan Saki type deal. Do you know what I mean? It looks as though, like I saw a bit of training footage of Pereira. He looks like a real athlete. He was, they were showing him sprawling and reversing positions and working on the ground, and it looks as if, though he hasn't been doing it long, he looks as though he kind of understands what he's doing, right? He has a vague idea of what's going on when his hips hit the mat. So, yeah, look, it's obvious he's taking it seriously. It's obvious the UFC are investing in him. Let's see 5 fights. If he batters everyone, that's obviously the next contender for Israel Adesanya. So, yeah, I expect him to come in here and get it done early enough.
Nice. Another fight that's popping up that should be a good one on the main card, Sean Denny. I'd just love to get your thoughts on it. Is the fight between Ali Aquinta and Bobby Green. I mean, Bobby Green is always in kind of entertaining fights. He sometimes comes in and fights of the night. Sometimes he comes in, fights frustrating fights, but always seems to be in kind of close-knit affairs, always at the end of maybe split decisions and stuff like that. How would you see Bobby Green coming in here against Iaquinta, who Iaquinta hasn't performed, I think, or came in and fought in 2 years in the UFC. I think it was 2019 the last time we seen him in there. So do you think we're expecting to see maybe a new and improved Iaquinta, and how do you think that he matches up with Bobby Green?
I'm sort of expecting a usual sort of Bobby Green type of fight where no matter what level the opponent is, he'll fight at that level. I think there's going to be a lot of talking, hopefully, with a bit of luck. Both lads love a bit of talking. He does have, Iaquinta has that full-time job though, and that team isn't what it was. So I wonder, like, he has been away for a while, but like that team sort of broke up. Like, how good is the training over there nowadays? How much has he added to his game? He's got very good wrestling. He's very durable, but Bobby Green, like on his day, he could probably beat anybody. But the fear is he'll match the opponent's skill level, and at that stage we're at a coin flip, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that fight could go anyway, but it will be a very good over and back one. Also on the prelims, we have Edmund Shahbazian coming in against Nasruddin Imamov. Not the easiest fight for Edmund Shahbazian, Harry. He's coming in again off a couple of losses against elite level opponents. I mean, would you be throwing him into a fight with a guy like Imamov? Because like Imamov came in and absolutely destroyed Ian Highness in his last fight and looked unbelievable doing that. And this is no easy task for Edmund Shahbazian. What's your thoughts on this fight?
Yeah, I mean, you and I have spoken about this offline, right? And what the fuck has Edmund Shahbazian done? Has he pissed in Dana White's cereal, or what's happened? Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're Edmund Shahbazian, we understand as fighters, you're always looking for the highest level of competition. You're always looking for the best fights. But the team around him have failed him. The team around him needed to take at least 2 steps back here, and they have given him not 1 step whatsoever. They've probably edged him forward, right? Imamov looks every bit a prospect, looks every bit. If you go in there and destroy Ian Highness, you're a fantastic fighter. Now, stars make fights and everything else, but nobody goes in and rolls over Ian Highness like Imamov did. So I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if the same thing happens to Edmund Shahbazian. And if that does happen, you've just lost a 23-year-old prospect. And essentially it is entirely his team's fault. And they should be ashamed. That.
Yeah, it's very well said, Harry. Like, I mean, I would be of a similar enough opinion of you that sometimes fighters need to be protected from themselves. You know, you get into a certain level of mentality where you really and truly believe that you can beat anybody put on the planet. But, I thought after the Brunson fight, there should have been maybe a little bit of, we have a special guest coming in here just in time to talk about Iain Gary. So he waited until Mr. Andy Stevenson is coming in here. Andy, we're just talking about Edmund Shahbazian, and before we move on to Iain Gary, we'll be finishing it up pretty soon now. But we were just talking about Shahbazian and his matchups. You know, he's been beaten by a couple of elite level guys, and this is no easy fight against Imamov either, who beat Ian Highness in his last fight by 2nd round TKO. I mean, we're talking about fighters needing to be protected from themselves sometimes, and we're looking at maybe Shahbazian's team wondering why they would take a fight as difficult as this. And this is not completely counting out Shahbazian going in and winning this either, but we're talking about difficult matchups here, and I think that Shahbazian should have had a back step after the Brunson fight. Just wondering what your thoughts on this is, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any specific thoughts on this matchup for Shahbazian, but I think fighters in general, like, it's very easy for us to say, take a backward step, and it may be right on occasion, but like a lot of the times, like, they don't want to, like, they really don't want to. Like, take a look, like, immediately I'm thinking of Pedro Carvalho last night on Bellator 270, 2 knockout losses in a row, and he goes in against a 51 fight veteran in Daniel Weichel. I would have taken that matchup if I was him. Gets dropped in the first 2 rounds consecutively and then comes back to win it. So it's a big risk versus reward game. And, fighters, they don't like taking backward steps usually. So sometimes, it probably should happen, but easier said than done, I think.
Yeah, big time. I mean, like, you're talking about risk and reward in this fight though, and the risk is if you go in there and lose against someone like Imamov, is that you're 3 fights in a row that you've lost in the UFC and you could be shown the door. So I know, Harry, you wanted to say something there.
Yeah, like I think the difference is like with Pedro, he's already fought for a title, right? Like he's in the prime of his career. Edmund Shahbazian is 23, you know? Like he hasn't even started his career really. And I think you're absolutely right with fighters. They're going to take whoever you give them and they're going to ask for the best fighters, which is why it's on his team, you know? His team turned down that fight. His team don't tell him that fight's come in. His team say, we want somebody a little bit further down the ladder, right? We saw against Hermanson and we saw against Brunson. He's not at that level. And he shouldn't be. He's 23, you know? Give him time. And the Imamov fight is not time. I think, Ian, I think you're absolutely right. I think if he goes in here and gets steamrolled, you'll see him removed from the rankings by Monday, you know?
Yeah, maybe that's still up in the air. You know, the night it's hard. Shahbazian does have a name under him, man. But I mean, that you are setting yourself up for to be cut if you are dropping 3 fights in a row. And I think Harry has a bone to pick with you there, Andy, for picking for not picking Justin Gaethje. I don't know if you have a response to that, Andy.
A response to that? I don't know. Like I don't think I was the only one to not pick Gaethje for starters, Mr. Harry Kearns. But also, I think it's a pick and fight really. Like there's no, you don't need to be a genius to predict how this fight is going to go. It's going to be 2 lads thrown in the blender, and we'll see who comes out standing.
That's it.
Like I just think Chandler will probably pick his shots a little bit better and manage to catch Gaethje. Like don't forget, like Michael Chandler's got dynamite in his hands too, and he's no stranger to a knockout. So I think when people think of Justin Gaethje, they think this, walk forward, just getting knockouts every time, and that's kind of what he is. But that doesn't mean that he can't get knocked out himself, and we've seen that multiple times in his UFC career to date.
100%. Now, before we wrap things up, I think we'll talk about the fight that we're probably all most looking forward to on the card, and that's Iain Gary versus Jordan Williams, and the long-awaited UFC debut of Iain Gary. I just want to get your guys' opinion on the build-up to his fight. What do you think the hype level is at for it, and how you expect the fight to go? And we'll go to Andy Stevenson first.
Jesus, lads, getting to me all the time here. Look, I think Iain Gary's exploding at the moment. As far as on the media side of things, we've all known for a long time what Iain Gary is. We've seen him rise up, but it's now, you see the likes of Daniel Cormier tweeting out earlier on that he's about going for a game of golf or not going for a game of golf with them. You see him doing stuff with BT Sport. He's on Ariel's show. He's everywhere in the US media, in the mainstream UK media, doing stuff with the likes of the BT Sport guys. As I said, I think that Iain Gary, from a fighting perspective, he's setting himself up for either a massive failure or massive success here, and I think it's going to be the success side of things. He puts a lot of pressure on himself, but as he tells himself, he's got big shoulders to carry it. So every single time we've seen him deliver, if you look at the last fight against Jack Grant, he came in with no camp, or not a no camp, but no team behind him, no corner. He was looking to come into the fight and an injured knee, and he delivered still. And he didn't get a finish, but he completely schooled Jack Grant, if we're honest, across the 5 rounds. So Iain Gary has a very bright future, and I'm very interested to see him perform tonight. I predict a first round knockout, and I'd be surprised if we don't see him put away Jordan Williams.
Yeah, good, nice. Harry, your thoughts?
So I pretty much agree wholeheartedly. I think the only thing that I will say, and I hope, right, and this sort of backs off our Edmund Shahbazian point, is give him all the fanfare, give him all the media attention, do the whole thing, make him a superstar. But I think in the cage, let's manage him properly, right? Yeah, I mean, Harry Kearns is probably bang on, right? But I think I'd like to see him slightly take the Sean O'Malley route, and maybe not as egregious as that, but fight the fights that are available to you, that are going to get you experience, that are going to get you cage time. Because at the end of the day, if you go in there and you have 5 fights under the banner and you knock out all 5 guys and their highlight reels, you've got a ticket to stardom with the UFC, regardless of who you are, right? So with somebody that already has the fanfare that Iain Gary has, if managed properly, you could be seeing an absolutely fantastic fighter come out of that. And I mean an elite fighter, right? Not just a fantastic Cage Warriors fighter, not just a middling UFC fighter, but a title contender, an elite fighter. And yeah, I definitely think he goes in and to borrow some words off my namesake, faults Jordan Williams for sure.
You mentioned ticket to success there, and maybe I wonder what you're thinking, Sean, Denny, and what Dara has to say there. And do you think that the UFC are trying to build Ian up, starting him with a favourable matchup for his first UFC fight? I mean, it is a favourable matchup for him, and we've seen in the past with Rhys McKee coming in there and having difficult matchups as well. It seems to be the trend that if UFC thinks highly of you, that they are going to probably give you some favourable matches to start off your UFC tenure. Do you think that that's what the UFC are doing here, Sean Denny?
I do, and I wonder, is it going to go against Iain Gary this time? Because I think if you give him someone like Jordan Williams, I think it's literally like setting off a Black Cat banger. I think you're going to light it up. It's going to explode. He's done all the work. And I don't think you're going to be able to rein him in once he's off to the races. Like, I think there is a middle ground, like between Hamzat and Jordan Williams, where I probably would have liked to see Iain Gary to maybe test him a little bit. But I have a feeling like if he goes in here and gets it done quickly, after all the media he's done, he's not a quiet lad. He's not gonna turn down fights. I think it's a way to the races if he does something spectacular here, and I think like you could see it's going to have to be the hard route from there. I think you're looking 4 or 5 fights, maybe title shot contention after that. I think.
Mm-hmm. Andy, I'm just wondering what you think if Iain Gary does go in there tonight and does what everyone is expecting him to do and gets Jordan Williams out of there pretty quickly. Like, how fast do you send him up? How many of these kind of fights do you want to see Iain Gary fight in the UFC first before he moves in and fights maybe the top 10 or 15 of the division?
I want to see Iain Gary have many fights in the UFC. I don't think we need to rush him here. Look, he's still very young. He's a young fighter, and he's young in his career. Like he's still less than 10 fights, and that's it's not a lot. And Sean's right. Like it's completely different to Rhys McKee. Like he's been given a tee-up fight here essentially. Like the Jordan Williams, no disrespect to him, but he's lost his last 2, and he was submitted by Mickey Gall. And there's no shame in that, but when you look at Iain Gary, he's levels above. Like I would pick Iain Gary in the fight against Mickey Gall any day of the week. And maybe that's just Irish bias, but I think it's pretty clear to anyone who watches Iain Gary. I think most people would also. I think you go the slow roll. I think the UFC are smart here. They see what they have in their hands. Like, this isn't a Paddy Pimblett where, he's thousands and thousands of fans and social media and has built this massive cult following. Iain has just purely gotten in here on his skills. So he's a Cage Warriors champion coming in, but the UFC see his potential. They see his star power or his potential star power. But that will only be achieved through his performances. And I think you go the slow roll with Iain. You let him build his highlight reel, continue to build his highlight reel, and give him incremental matchups where you give him the time to spend at Sanford MMA. He's talking about getting ragdolled by Derek Brunson in the training room. Let him continue to get ragdolled by Derek Brunson in the training room. Let him continue to get beaten up in training so that he can perform when it matters on the stage in the UFC in front of millions of people worldwide.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more there. It's very well said. Speaking of Sanford MMA, and we're going to wrap this up now in a couple of minutes. Just if you're Iain Gary, guys, what are you going in there? What work are you getting in there? Are you working on that wrestling? I know, like, we're in Ireland and in Europe, in most places, are not known for their wrestling. We've seen that you do need elite level wrestling if you are to get to the upper echelon levels of the UFC. If you're Iain Gary there, how much of a benefit is you going in there and drilling with the likes of Mike Chandler and stuff like that, and getting your grappling up to the next level? Harry, do you think that's exactly what Iain Gary needed in order to get up to the next level of the next level of progression and his basic skills and stuff like that?
For sure. I mean, obviously, Sanford MMA has fantastic striking and fantastic grappling. So Iain will obviously be going in there and working everything. But you'd expect that. I mean, we say he doesn't have top tier grappling and wrestling or whatever, but everyone thought Jack Grant was going to submit him, right? And even in the grappling exchanges, not the wrestling exchanges, but the grappling exchanges, Iain outperformed Jack by a long way there. So I definitely don't think he's any slouch in the grappling exchanges. But why wouldn't you take advantage of elite wrestling if you have it, right? Andy already alluded to it. If you've got Derek Brunson in a room, pull him to a corner and have him for every single round, right? Don't let him go anywhere. Get a handcuff, put it to you, put it to him. We're now best mates, right? That should be the next 6 months to a year of Iain Gary's life, right? Just getting murdered by Derek Brunson over and over and over again in a wrestling room. Mike Chandler, whoever else they've got there that can wrestle, right? Because we've seen Iain striking. We've seen it. It's fantastic. The way he picks his shots, his range, his movement, his feints, they're all there already. And yeah, okay, I'm sure he can improve. I'm sure he can brush up on those things. But you round out the thing that you're weakest at. And you have a real good ability to do that at Sanford. So why not take it?
Yep, I agree with you 100%. And it seems that we've lost Sean Denny there now. Before we wrap it up, I'm just wondering, just give us a quick prediction on how you think Iain Gary and Jordan Williams is going to go tonight, Andy, before we finish up.
I'll be shocked if we don't see an Iain Gary finish. And not only that, he needs to deliver a finish now. You know, we're all talking him up. Everyone out there, he's a big favorite. We're expecting a finish. So I do think he'll get one. I predict a knockout. But I wouldn't be surprised if he submits him either. So I'll go with the knockout. I'll go first round knockout. Yeah, that's my pick.
Yeah, Harry?
I'm going to go a little bit field. And I think if I'm Iain Gary and I get in there and I feel that the levels are really, really different, I'm going to try and submit Jordan Williams. Because everyone expects him to go in and blow him away on the feet, right? So you take him down, you submit him. And I think everyone's like, ooh, okay. Like, he's got grappling as well, right? But yeah, inside a round, I'd expect.
Yeah, I kind of agree with the two of you guys as well. You know, there's been a lot of talk, especially from Iain this week. He wants to go in there. He wants to do better and perform better on his debut that Conor McGregor did. I think he has like 1 minute and 40 seconds to beat with Conor's debut with Marcus Brimage. That's not going to be easy to do. But I would very well expect Iain Gary to go in there and get the job done inside one round tonight. And deliver on his promise. And I'm very, very excited to see the future for Iain Gary inside the UFC. There's a lot of fun nights for us ahead. We'll be covering his career the whole way along. Thanks, Harry, for joining me today. Thanks, Andy, for joining us again today. Thanks to Sean Denny as well. You can follow Harry at Harry Powell _BJJ on Twitter. At Andy Steve123 and Andy Stevenson MMA on Instagram. You can follow Sean Denny at Denny Rants. Follow myself at O'Neill MMA on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you everybody for tuning in and listening and sending questions and everything today. Before I let you go, I just want to remind you about our sponsors, eatallreal.com. Go and grab yourself some delicious protein bars. Up there on top of Andy's beautiful face, you can see the logo there. You go over
Shout out to Niall Hardy.
Yeah, go over to eatallreal.com. You enter the code SevereMMA. You get 15% off, and you get to enjoy delicious protein bars made by our good friend Niall Hardy in the Twitter group. Go support him. Go support Irish MMA. Support Severe MMA. Come subscribe, follow the guys. We did some great work this week. Andy and everybody and Sean at Bellator. Go and check out all that stuff on the Severe MMA YouTube page. Sean and Graham will be back tomorrow with a brand new podcast. Check that out as well. And along with lots more stuff coming next week over on Severe MMA Patreon. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining me. Thanks again, guys, for joining me for this pre-show. And hope everybody enjoys the fights tonight. Going to be a really, really good night of fights, a stacked card, and I can't wait to see it all go down. Thanks again, guys. Thanks, everybody, for listening again. Like, share, subscribe. Hit that bell button up in the top corner of our Twitter page. Don't miss out on any of our live streams. We will be live streaming ahead of most events and doing a lot more as well. We're going to have plenty of content coming your way towards the end of the year and into next year as well. So thank you, everybody, for the support. Thanks for the lads again once more for joining me. And there's only so many thanks that I can say before we shut off this stream.
You're a
After thanking
professional, Ian O'Neill. You're a goddamn
after
professional.
thanking everybody 3 times over here now again, and we'll just bring in Sean Denny to say goodbye. Follow him at Denny Rants. All the best. Good luck, and we'll talk to you the next time.
Thanks, lads.
Beauty.
Apologies, I was so late, Eno.
Don't worry about it. I kind of started a little bit early anyway because I got my fucking time zones mixed up, of course.
Are we still live?
No. Oh, it is. Oh, yeah.